Hello everyone, this is AndresRestart, and congratulations, we've made it to the month of November. We've waited so many years for Metroid Prime 4, and we are now in the last full month before the game comes out on December 4th. And all throughout this month, I plan to cover this game more so than ever before. I think it's going to be a really fun time, especially with Nintendo now finally marketing the game. That's right, they are truly marketing Metroid Prime 4. Yesterday, to start the month of November, Nintendo put out an actual tweet talking about Metroid Prime 4, which they don't really do. And they're doing that. We've talked about other things. We've seen commercials. We've seen the art book stuff. More appears to be on the way. But today, what I want to focus on is something I recently realized. I've been doing a little bit more digging, more so than usual, and I noticed something that I think is actually extremely interesting, and it has to do with time travel potentially being in Metroid Prime 4. Now, we've been theorizing about time travel being in this game for many years already, but with what I recently noticed from some recent big things, the biggest thing being the magazine scans from Nintendo Dream magazine, there's something in there, when you consider everything else, that I think actually has huge implications, and it's highly suggestive that the world in Metroid Prime 4 is going to be absolutely massive. Like, objectively speaking, we already know that technically, as a Nintendo-made game, from a storage space perspective, is literally the largest Nintendo game ever made. Some people might bring up games like Hyrule Warriors Age of Imprisonment, but that's not being made by Nintendo, that's being made by Koei Tecmo. Nintendo games are very efficient with their compression, so the file sizes are a lot smaller than other games from third-party companies. So to see a game like Metroid Prime 4 have such a substantial size, that means a lot. But when we consider this time travel stuff, I think there's something even bigger that's being suggested here. Think something like A Link to the Past with the Light and Dark World, or Metroid Prime 2 with the Light and Dark World there, which was inspired by A Link to the Past. I think something even better and grander is happening here with Metroid Prime 4, which is what we're diving into today. But before going forward, let me point out that I do have this goal to reach 60,000 subscribers by the end of the year. So if you find yourself enjoying my videos, I would very much appreciate your support. It would make a huge difference. But thank you for at least coming in to watch today's video. So when it comes to the time travel stuff with Metroid Prime 4, we've actually had some pretty good indications that there might be something like this since June of 2015. In an interview conducted by Tom Phillips from Eurogamer, they were having an interview with the Prime series producer, Kensuke Tanabe. And in that interview, he said this: "Instead of broadening it to more planets, I would have one and would focus on the timeline, and being able to change that. That's one interesting idea I have in mind, but I understand many people thought that Echoes was too difficult." So here Tanabe is talking about how he's thinking about a better way to implement the Light and Dark World mechanic. The Light and Dark World mechanic is something that Retro has worked on before. As we see here from the Metroid Prime art book from the producer's notes, Retro proposed a concept of light and darkness for the game. They explained that it was inspired by The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. The concept involved two overlapping worlds, Light World as the one you start in, and the Dark World dominated by evil, where changes in one world would correspondingly affect the other. As it happens, this was an idea I had conceived myself while working on The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. I was originally the director of the project. However, implementing the concept as a game system had proven difficult, and even after completing The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, I felt like I hadn't fully refined or explored it. As it was originally my idea, I thought it would be worthwhile to revisit it with Retro after 10 years, so I agreed to proceed with their concept. In the end, my impression was, this concept is still as difficult as expected. However, I believe Retro succeeded in integrating it into the game system better than we had during the development of The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. So Kensuke Tanabe originally came up with the concept for The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Retro Studios was inspired by the concept, and so they worked together on it for Metroid Prime 2. And they feel that they did an even better job of it. However, as we talked about with the Eurogamer interview, there were still issues. And there is an implication here from even this recent artbook entry that more could be done. Now, yes, I agree. If we only look at this interview from 2015, even when we consider that it seems like Tanabe is suggesting that more could be done with this idea, even with these recent comments from the art book, that's still not enough to believe that there's going to be time travel in this game. But from this same Eurogamer interview, it was talked about how Tanabe wants to make a story about Silex and his relationship with Samus, and what do we know now? That's literally what Metroid Prime 4 is all about. So if one of the two big ideas that Tanabe talked about in this interview from 2015 has shown to be part of the game, why can't the other? Especially when we consider there's actually a decent amount of evidence suggesting that there is going to be something like this beyond this interview and beyond the comments made in the art book. So, what are those other elements? Well, for example, we have seen the back of the box art from Metroid Prime 4, and from translations, this is what we've heard. With the hopes vested in you and your new powers, return home from an unknown planet, having been transported across space and time to the unknown planet of Viros. Samus Aran must carve a path with her newfound powers in order to return to her original world. Now, something I think we should be noting here is that there could be some translation issues here, as we've seen with recent translations from the magazine scans, but it does seem to suggest that there is going to be something having to do with both traversing space and time. And we've already talked about how Metroid Prime 4 has a logo that's very much in the shape of a black hole. We've also seen with this mysterious artifact, it causes this big purple-white flash that seems to set everything else in motion for what happens on Viros elsewhere, which is not on planet Tanimar. How do we go from planet Tanimar to Viros? We presume it has something to do with the artifact having this big flash. But this artifact is also the same shape as the logo, a black hole. From what we understand of some theories regarding black holes in real life, it's possibly having to do with a portal, as in the black hole being the entrance, there is the wormhole that extends out to a white hole. So it's a portal system. That's a theory at least, which is something they could be utilizing in Metroid Prime 4. It also does have the title Beyond, which could be suggesting going beyond. So that can tie into traversing across both space and time. And this idea becomes increasingly more interesting when we consider that we've actually seen a great deal of portals all throughout Metroid Prime 4 so far. So getting back to the back of the box art, when we take a closer look at one of the images here, we can see a variety of what appear to be portals. Perhaps this is a room that allows us to fast travel to other parts of the world. And we've actually seen some extra support of this because we have seen Samus coming out of portals from various locations. We saw Samus seemingly coming out of a portal in the forest area with the very first trailer for Metroid Prime 4 at the very end, and then with the Welcome to Viros trailer, we see Samus more prominently coming out of a portal in this forest area. But also, from the magazine scans from the Nintendo Dream magazine, there is one screenshot that we don't have a high-resolution version of, but when we do zoom in, we can almost make out what appears to be a portal off in the distance right behind these weird rock-like structures that are almost forming somewhat like an irregular circle. But here's something else that you may not have noticed. So when we go back to the Welcome to Viros trailer, when they're showing off these psychic abilities, there is a quick clip that shows Samus with these psychic abilities drawing a circle around something that looks almost like a portal. Now, going back to Metroid Prime 2, there were portals that allowed us to traverse between the light and dark worlds. So going back to that original interview from 2015, how Tanabe was talking about utilizing time travel as almost like a better way to handle the light and dark worlds from Metroid Prime 2, perhaps portals will still be a way to traverse not just space, but also time. And I will point out this interesting connection here. The light and dark world in Metroid Prime 2 was inspired by the light and dark world in A Link to the Past. Well, if we're going to see time travel in Metroid Prime 4, perhaps it could be inspired by Ocarina of Time, which also kind of had a similar light and dark world mechanic, but instead, you went back and forth between two different periods of time. Now, something else neat that I think a lot of people have missed. When we go back to the Welcome to Viros trailer again, there's something else very interesting here.
The threads intertwining beyond space and time are beginning to weave a new tale.
The threads intertwining beyond space and time are beginning to weave a new tale. There's another mention there of space and time, going beyond space and time. mentioning time is interesting. Like, I don't think that's just flair. We've seen time mentioned with the marketing for Metroid Prime 4 at least twice. So considering that history, I actually think there's a decent amount of reason to expect some form of time travel in Metroid Prime 4, and if they are indeed going to be using portals here, similar to what they did in Metroid Prime 2, perhaps it's going to be more so jumping across both space and time as we've seen with the marketing. But yet, there is something else I've noticed, and I think this perhaps may be the biggest indicator that something is going on here when it comes to this time travel stuff. So, we've seen this new art from the magazine scans of this Lemorne character. Well, we've never seen this perspective of this Lemorne character before. We can see how they actually look. They look like a living being. But you see, what's interesting about this character is that upon closer inspection, I do not think this is a new Lemorne character. We've seen this character before. We've seen them in the Welcome to Veros trailer when we see that Lemorne ghost. As you see here, this Lemorne ghost is transparent, very ghost-like, as we've seen ghosts depicted throughout the history of mankind, and also considering the recurring theme of Metroid Prime games, how you do interact with an ancient race that is no longer around, it's pretty believable to think that this Lemorne character we see in this trailer is from a different time, a ghost. But what's super interesting about this is that now we have this new art from the magazine scans of this same character. Yes, that's right, I think it's the same character. Like, if you look at the groin area, for example, you can see the same pattern. You can see the same style of clothing. You can see an overall same shape. This is the same character, it's just with the art, we can see them fully colored, fully textured, without any transparency like a ghost as we see in this trailer here. And so I don't think this single part here outright confirms that there is going to be time travel in this game and we're going to be traveling to different points in time where we'll speak to this Lemorne character when they are alive and they don't look like a transparent ghost, and then we will be talking to them when they are a transparent ghost. I think that's a likelihood, but that's not the only possibility. It is possible that maybe this character is simply casting itself in some sort of spectral form across a great distance because Samus is not nearby and they want to communicate with them in that way. That's possible. And it's also possible that maybe we only see flashbacks of this Lemorne character, and so we get to see a different time, but we don't actually get to traverse it. But considering with the marketing how on 2 different occasions they've talked about traversing both space and time, we've seen from the 2015 Eurogamer interview that Tanabe wants to do something with time travel having to do with the gameplay, wanting to improve upon the light and dark world concept, which is further implied and suggested by a recent entry from Tanabe in the art book that just came out. And then we also consider that there are portals all throughout Metroid Prime 4 that we have seen that are similar to the portals we saw in Metroid Prime 2 that also allow traversal across 2 different worlds. And when we also consider the sheer size of Metroid Prime 4, like literally its size in terms of storage space, we know it's a grand game. And we know from the magazine scans and from articles Nintendo's put out that the world of Metroid Prime 4 is actually fairly expansive. There's more than just the desert to explore with Viola. They have suggested multiple areas, not just this one desert. And we've seen that there is a mountain with smoke coming out, a volcano. We've seen the giant storm area. We've seen the giant forest. We've seen these giant icy mountains, which we talked about a few days ago, actually seems like might be the tops for a massive ice cavern that we explore, or that weird structure east of the ice mountains. We've seen a lot of big areas to explore off into the distance, and we've been told that there are some vast areas. Going back to the massive ice cavern, and we look at this screenshot here that yes is highly zoomed in and not a high resolution, but we can see a pretty vast area to explore here. So the maps are going to be large. We've even seen mention from the magazine scans of there being ancient ruins. What is going on with these ancient ruins? And if there's going to be time travel, could we perhaps see these ancient ruins in a time when they are no longer ancient or ruins? I think the answer is possibly yes. And so there's a huge opportunity here to show off a lot of interesting stuff of the world and how it can change across 2 different times. Like, we look at a lot of the stuff we've seen from the forest era, how there's a lot of ruins that's kind of damaged and shows signs of age. If we go to a different time where the Lemorne is not a ghost but a living being, perhaps in these times there isn't destroyed structures, and this might lead to different places that we can explore. Perhaps there will be different openings and such. And so with this time travel, they can actually greatly expand upon just how much there is to explore in this world. It already seems massive just by looking at the current time. But with all these portals and these different hints of time travel here, we could be talking about an even vaster world to explore, because we may be able to explore this world a second time with many, many differences. Perhaps more so than we saw from Ocarina of Time, for example, or even more differences than what we saw from Metroid Prime 2, or perhaps at least it'll be done in a way that is more inviting for more people and just overall more satisfying. In Metroid Prime 4, they may be aiming to really fully execute a lot of ideas they've considered in the past. Like, we've even seen from the art book that they had a lot of designs that were about Metroids fusing with the space pirates. Now we see that in Metroid Prime 4. Metroid Prime 4 might just be about going back to all these different ideas they've had and perfecting them into one masterful, vast, huge experience. So I'm hyped, but how about you? Let me know what you all think in the comments below. This is AndresRestart. Thank you so much for listening and watching, and I will see you all really soon. Take care. Bye.